Okay, so here we're going to take a look at the place where this neighborhood is meant to go. This yellow area defines the place in the first gallery habitat where the dwellings that you're building, the little homes or apartments, need to all go. So I set up a few just in a very rough idea, just to give a sense of the possibilities here. It was done quickly, and before we take a closer look at that, I'm going to explain some things about how these neighborhoods are organized. So I'll turn that off. Okay, I tried to set up the lights here a bit more like they would really be if we were representing this this colony accurately. The light comes from above, from tubes that are piping in sunlight by fiber optics, and it's very strong sunlight, and there are a number of places where that happens, and because of fiber optics, they can be guided in wherever you want them to release their light. For instance, down here on this sub-platform that I created, I have a light tube releasing its light here. For this area, the only place that's really an accessible window are these two, but they're big, they're really big. If you put a human figure here, it wouldn't even be as tall as this side of the window. So that's where you get a view to the outside. There are two stairwells. One is over here. I haven't set the lights over here, but here is one vertical set of stairs, so you can get up and get access this way. I hope you've seen how those work. If you haven't, you should go look at a video about that. And here's the main one. And this is the exit to the airlock bay, which isn't in this rendering, but that's where it is. And here is the connection to the other habs. And this hab is of course huge, but we won't look at that right now. I set up the cables that will support this as well. They could possibly be distributed differently, but this is the idea. Everything that's built inside of this space is supported from above. And these cables, I'm not sure what material they'll be. There may be basalt fiber, they might be metal. They're pretty thick. They have a jacket around the outside to protect them from being cut or damaged by heat. So you can use those as support for your dwellings. The dwellings themselves can be pretty flimsy because they don't ever have to deal with the forces of weather. The gravity is very low, and support can be reliant on these cables. So the support, the stresses that the materials that the dwellings are made out of themselves don't need to support a lot of stress. They can be pretty basic, and that gives you a lot of design freedom. The cylinder here is the water tank for this neighborhood. I haven't put in the pipes to it. I was just doing a very rough draft here, give you an idea. But the water is administered through these very large pipes that carry a few different utilities, both electricity and water and communications. So that connects to this, and then that's gravity fed down to the dwellings below. Maybe there'd be a pump as well, I'm not sure. It's 7 cubic meters, 7,000 liters, and that lasts the 30 to 50 people who live here. We'll start with 30 in 20 dwellings for 3 days before it's refilled. So this is a conservation measure. Using your water wisely is very important here. So, and cleanliness of the water is also extremely important. So monitor the use and keep people careful about water use, and to monitor any source of contamination, that tank is only filled periodically. And then if you have a tank in your dwelling, you have to fill it from here. This over here that I zoomed over to is where wastewater is disposed of. It's got a 2-filter process here and 2 holding tanks. When it gets down to here, it should be clean water, but that isn't taken for granted. The robot workforce, which is quite extensive, and they do a lot of work around the colony, including cleaning and maintenance and transport and checking and any sort of security kind of need, mostly safety concerns. They do all of that. So they empty out this holding tank after it's full and monitor its contents to make sure it's actually good, clean water before it's used anywhere else. So that means that the plumbing connections between these tanks and everything else, there are none. There's no plumbing connections. This is emptied by hand into tanks on robots, and before it's put into the general system, everything is checked. So the kitchen, I put in this subfloor just as an example draft. This neighborhood has the rights to everything in the yellow area and anything below that area up to a depth of 2.5 meters. So I put in this floor as a sketch of where you might decide to put your kitchens and maybe your laundry area. You can use the subfloor. And I didn't put a hole in to get access there, but you can cut a hole in the floor as long as you don't interfere with the supports, which also aren't shown. But that allows you to have a beautiful view that's very, very long, and make good use of space. And that is what this is all about, learning how to make good use of space within these conditions. All right, let me turn on this draft of the dwellings. Now, this is nothing impressive. I just wanted to indicate a few ideas. Not only can you make use of the cables for support, you can attach to the walls of the habitat, and the gravity you're dealing with is not very strong, so stacking things up like this is not that hard. I changed the dimensions here to be 7 meters by 3 meters, a very small change, but that means that they can be 4.5 meters high, which means that it's feasible to put 2 floors in the entire thing. So that's something to consider. The stacking over here of the standard shapes that I had recommended at first, 6 by 4 by 4. I left spaces between them because that might be nice, so that you have little walkout spaces that serve as little patios. It also prevents sound from leaking between one and the others. But of course, you could save considerable space by having all these walls be joined. This also shows how you are mostly going to have at least 2 walls free where you can put windows to get long views. On these areas, you probably wouldn't want to put them on the sides. You probably would want to put them on the front and back, here and here, but you can certainly do that. You need to have walkways between them so you have access to all of them. But again, remember that those can be very light, and especially consider that stairs is a whole different thing here. All right, that's why these are made these ways. This step is 50 centimeters high, and that is how high steps should be. You don't need steps lower than that. It's just too easy to climb. It would just become boring. You'd skip steps all the time, just jumping between 2 or 3 steps. And even with steps 50 centimeters high, you could still do that. In fact, it would be easier for anyone who is in decent shape to pull themselves up with their hands alone using a cable like this. Moving up and down is really, really easy. Although these are going to be split into partial floors and double floors and short floors, remember that it's no big deal. Okay, I tried to demonstrate a few options regarding that in this example here. Again, this is really rough. I don't have time to spend on this, and I have to just make you very rough drafts. I wish I could spend more time. Maybe I'll be able to in a few days or a week or something like that. But for instance, standing up and sitting down or lying down is also really easy, not much work. I weigh 60 kilograms. On the moon, I would weigh 10 kilograms. You know, I weigh as much as a small dog on the moon. It's really easy for me to get up and down. There's not much pressure on my joints when I'm kneeling or I'm squatting or I've crossed my legs. So, you know, if you want to make sure that you have your floor space very accessible to you, just have everybody sit on cushions on the floor. And, you know, if you're not using cushions, stack them against the wall. Now you have seating for 8 people, and it takes no space at all. In fact, I didn't do this, but I wanted to. You could just stick those to the wall. You put a little bit of Velcro on them, or you have hooks, and you just stick them. You just hang them on the wall when you're not using them. And if you're not using your table, I made this table very quickly. It's got fold down legs, and it's a nice big table, almost 1.5 meters across. When you want to use it, you just lift it off the wall and unfold the legs and set it on the floor. Very easy. You know, if that weighed 10 kilograms, which would be a lot for a table like this. It's a glass table with a mirror on this side, so that when it's hanging on the wall, you can use it as a mirror. That's you know, if there was 10 kilograms on Earth, I mean, so that means on here that this weighs a kilogram and a half. You can easily lift that off the wall and put it on the floor and think nothing of it, and put it away when you're not using it. I put a partial floor here that's only about 1.5 meters high right now, or it could be even less. It could be 1.20 meters. It could be 1.10 meters, and you could move it up and down and adjust it. You know, I don't know what the system would be. Maybe it'd be a motor, because that's not a big deal. Power use on the moon is no big deal. You've got lots of power. Don't even think about how much electricity you're using. Just make sure that the physical resources you're using are being used efficiently. So I thought of this as a home office kind of space. If you want it to be completely out of the way, stack it up against the ceiling. If you have people doing activity below, then put it like 1.20 meters from the roof or from the ceiling. And you can sit down here on your cushions and work here, and you still can sit up straight. You still have space over your head. Or you can adjust it down to be properly a full height floor. You make it 2 meters high if that's what you want to do for a particular situation. Oops, sorry, I'm going a little fast here. And I made these stairs. Oh man, why is that going so fast? Let me slow this down. Now we're going to take some time to get back, but that was not expected. So if you are getting up and down to this floor, you don't need to think very much about stairs. I made this funny shelf thing that could also double as stairs, because as I said, the stairs can be very high and you can leap up almost without needing the help of stairs at all. So if you step up here and then over here to this shelf that has one side that can also be used as a step, and then you step up here, and then you finally step up here, that works just fine. You weigh very little. Your legs are really, really strong, and if you lose your balance, you have plenty of time to recover your balance, because you accelerate at 1/6 the rate you would on Earth. It's very easy to regain your balance or grab something if you really can't. And if you fall, even if you fall, it's no big deal. So don't use up any space with stairs. Make them multiple use spaces. This is also a shelf on the back side. These are little shelves you can put knickknacks on, or office supplies, or kitchen gadgets, something like that. Tools. This side can also be shelves. You can use the space very efficiently. These things up here, those are drawers for, let's say, clothing or bedding or stuffed animals. I don't know, anything. And when you're not using them, you can lift them up and hook them to the ceiling so they're completely out of the way. If you want to use all of your floor space, you can free up all of your floor space. Again, if these were heavy, they would weigh maybe 15 kilograms. So that is like 2.5 kilograms. It's a large bottle of water. You know, it's nothing. Lifting them and putting them down on the floor and getting them out of the way when you're done is no big deal. So make sure you can use your space efficiently by doing something like that. This in the corner is a personal tank of water. I don't see any real need to put plumbing to all of these dwellings. And again, because for keeping your water supply very, very clean and tracking any source of contamination, personal water tanks are filled by you and drain into a holding tank of your gray water here, and then you have a robot empty that. Yeah, we can have a robot fill that as well, but you know, 100 liters of water weighs, what would that be, like 16.5 kilos, and because you only weigh 10 or 15 kilos, 20 at most, another 15 kilos of water is still like half of what you would weigh on Earth or less. So don't worry about carrying a 100-liter bottle and putting it up so that you have water for a couple of days. No big deal. I put this behind something that's more like a curtain, or it could be curved doors, so that when you're not using the sink that goes here, you don't see it. Maybe it looks more neat and clean that way. This is just a really early draft of the kind of composting toilet that these would have to use, and this is the really big filtering device that would need to eliminate smells and vapors inside of that space. Mostly smells. You know how it is. I put little shelves over here above that space. Nothing has thickness. I did this really fast. Okay, so that gets kind of long, but it's just a very simple introduction to possibilities. We are going to need to produce assets that other people can use that illustrate each of these kinds of things that's in a more finished form, so they can be repeated if people want to set up their dwelling and not make things themselves, but just get little pieces of furniture that's already been made by somebody else. We need good versions of all this kind of stuff and lots of other stuff as well. Okay? And if we have a bunch of dwellings that people have made, those can be ready-made dwellings other people could just repeat and put in their space if they want to. So we need to flesh all of this out. We need lots of creativity in this. I would like each of the dwellings that we make to be a unique interpretation of how one can make use of the possibilities on the moon to make a pleasant living space that's also very efficient and makes sense in this environment. Okay, I'll talk to you guys soon, and thanks for your work, and we're making progress, and we'll get better.